Good evening. My name is Kathy Dice. Some of you may remember me as Kathy Hillman, and some of you may not remember me at all. Either way, this year marks our 132nd Alumni Banquet, and it is my pleasure and privilege to be your tour guide on behalf of the class of 1973 on this epic journey of our own Holly High School. Our history goes back a long way, all the way back to 1865 officially, but we do go back a little bit further, 35 years to be exact, when the first registered settlers came into Holly. Wow, think about it. That's only 54 years after we officially became a country and 7 years before we became a state. Granted, we weren't even close to being on the map yet, but we're here, just waiting to get our footing as a bona fide town. I don't know about you, but I get asked a lot, "Where's Holly?" I say, "Well, it's under your feet." I'm kidding. Actually, I just pull out my trusty map that's at the end of my arm and point. Oh, come on, you know you've all done it, at least once. Oh, Holly, Michigan. With its harsh winters, hot summers, a rampant disease or two, and some wild animals that didn't like us much. They probably wanted us for dinner, and not as a guest either. But by 1865, we were an official village with stores, mail, and an undertaker/furniture maker, Joseph and Christine Wingelmeyer. I heard that their Aunt Claria was a model for the caskets. Now that's multitasking. Well, but it must have been a great business model because their store still stands as one of Michigan's oldest and most trusted family-owned businesses. But it wasn't long before we looked around and saw a big problem on the horizon. We were on the verge of a population explosion. But we are Hollyites, born and bred from some pretty hardy stock, which means we knew what to do. No problem too big for us. I mean, we even changed the course of a river that Mother Nature had already set. 'Cause, well, you know, man always has a better idea, right? But we were growing pretty fast. And we had no fire department to speak of, no police department. Okay, we did have one, kinda, but they were only allowed one bullet at a time. But the bigger issue was no school system to call our own. The attempt was made to educate the young'uns, and in 1846, the Holly area finally had a suitable schoolhouse. I know, you're thinking, well, where was the first one located, Kathy? Well, actually, it wasn't even in the town of Holly, per se. It was on the border of Holly and Groveland Townships, way out there on what is now Dixie Highway, which was actually the Pony Express route between Flint and Pontiac. But I digress. And our teaching staff was quite challenged, to say the least. But they gave it their best effort, starting with a 16-year-old teacher by the name of Adelia Young, all the way up to a lady with a familiar-sounding name to most of you, Mabel D. Benson. Well, just before the turn of the century, we decided to put some real effort into making sure our people had an education. Now, before you get all excited and say, "Kathy, you forgot all about the other schools." All right. For the sake of time, I wasn't going to say, but since you asked so nicely, yes, we had other schools of a different caliber. Mostly 1 or 2 rooms, like the Ward School built on the corner of Saginaw and Sherman Street, which became a church for a bit. Then the Olive Branch School. And then in 1867, we built a biggie right there on College Street called the Union School. It was the first high school inside the village limits, bringing all of the high school age students into one building. It was the pride of the town. Alas, it didn't take long before we outgrew this school as well. So we tore it down in 1912. And for the time being, we taught our kids in Baird's Opera House on Broad Street, above where the Moose Lodge, Furniture Row Antiques, and Andy's Place are now. Well then, in 1917, it happened. the skies parted. The animals roared. Well, except for the chickens. They clucked loudly, I might add. And we built another high school on the same property. Well, things being what they were back then, we decided not to call it Union School, and in 27 named it, that's right, Mabel D. Benson School. See, I told you probably heard that name before. And if you went to that school, you were smart. And you know, there's still a cement name tag that hangs over the doorway. I mean, can you imagine what sense of pride it was to see her name on her beloved high school? Well, sadly, this dynamic teacher left us in 1982. But we used that building for the high school until 58, when we built our new high school right up the road on Baird Street. And Mabel D. Benson became the junior high school for grades 7 and 8. Well, we all know life goes on, and then you throw in all the new faces, junior high personalities, and heaven help us, a few hormone fairies into the blender, and you come out with many of us gracing those narrow hallways to start learning who and what we were all about. Many memorable teachers inspired us to be better people, encouraging us to meet our life goals like Bob Varner, Lorraine Rowlandson, Dwayne Raffin, Richard Jake Jacobson, Daryl Burgett, John Rose, and Mrs. Chris, to name a few. They may have come and gone, but not before they left their indelible mark on how we saw things in the world. Guiding young minds and watching with pride as some of us became music teachers, math or science teachers, and one of our own was indoctrinated into the Michigan Wrestling Hall of Fame after so many years of teaching and service to the community. Yeah, we have police officers, military careers, and yes, even a comedian or two. Looking back, Holly schools have made changes in many of our lives with great pride of a town that was behind them. But back in the day, our school colors were orange and black. But hold on, I'll get to that in a second. But they really were orange and black until 1938, when Mr. Dallas Winslow, owner of the Holly Hotel, offered to purchase band uniforms. But there was a catch. He would not purchase orange and black because, well, our arch rival, Fenton, had those colors. Now he purchased red and gray. And for the record, we still had the name Broncos right from Jump Street in 1894. And if you don't know what Jump Street means, ask my writer. He likes to use a lot of weird terms. But lots of changes came to pass with our new school system. Elementary schools were added in Holly and Davisburg, and they all became Broncos too. And through the years, there have been a couple of attempts to change the name, but all with no luck. So we kept the name Broncos, spelling it Broncos, until 1946, when the student body elected to change it to Broncos, with an H. I mean, it's still pronounced Broncos, but now it's Broncos with an H, because we're special that way. But the charge to change the name was led by a senior named Bruce Dreyer. Anyone heard of him? Well, shortly before that, two other seniors, Wilbert Bill McKeechee and Robert, or Bob Bravender, were hanging out one rainy day, and they loved music and enjoyed playing the Cornell University fight song. And on that fall day, they decided to write a fight song for Holly High School. And this year is the 85th anniversary of that original score. Well, apparently, adding the letter H to the Holly Broncos was just the little charge that we needed to step on the gas. And like any good school, we came out swinging. We came to chew bubblegum and kick some butts. And then we ran out of bubblegum. You might want to put that on your shopping list. Write it down. Oh, sorry, I digressed again. Anyway, not only did we excel in academics, we took the sports world by storm, all the way to championship levels. Not once, not twice, not even 3 times, but several times over the years, and we are still doing it in the sports world. But you remember that guy, Bruce Dreyer? Goodness gracious, he's earned a few statistics of his own that are, well, pretty impressive. Our friend Bruce Dreyer, also known as Added the H guy, was also busy earning 8 varsity letters in football, basketball, baseball, and track and field. And I do believe that record still stands. And he was the deciding factor in winning 2 basketball district championships. And, wait, there's more! He also played the trumpet in Holly's marching band. Oh, one more thing. Bruce was student council president in his senior year. Amazing. It's a busy guy. But we didn't want to duplicate anyone else's mascot, so we sent letters to area schools inquiring about theirs. Finally, the Broncos selection was made official by the student body in 1946. As with any prosperous and growing student body, we were quickly running out of room in the original Union School, so in true Holly fashion, we fixed it. In '58, we built a new school for a population that we couldn't seem to contain. So many good memories and thoughts, to me at least, even though it would be 11 years old by the time I walked the hallowed halls of the town's new pride and joy. And in '62, we actually celebrated the new school with a bonfire and a snake dance at Cyclone Park. How do you know this, I ask? Because our writer said so. And he would never lie to us. Right? Right? Nah. But now, the pièce de résistance. You didn't know I knew French, did you? You're right, I don't. But who can forget the Holly Bell? It stood proudly in the Union School tower back then and became one of Holly's treasures, which just added fuel to the fire of competition with our rivals over in Fenton. It became tradition to steal each other's icons. They had a cannon. Well, one night it was stolen, so I've heard, by one of our heroes and driven proudly around town under the noses of our competitors before the upcoming game. Have you heard his name? Carl Richter. He's kind of a big deal around these parts. But of course, we, or they, depending on who stole whose first, would give it back after the prestigious and highly spirited game to plant the seeds for next year's Follies. Okay, they were supposed to give it back, which didn't always go as planned for some reason. But anyway, we took that bell to the new school right up the road at 300 East Street, and we had a special stand built just to show it off. Or torment our rival school, of course, depending on how you look at it. But do you remember or ever wonder why we do homecoming? Well, let me tell you. It all started with the University of Missouri football game in 1911. All alumni were encouraged to attend, and the first homecoming-like event was centered around a parade and a football game. It was so successful it became an annual event. Well, there you go. I answered your question. Now you'll sleep easier tonight. Well, apparently we pondered the idea and figured, why reinvent the wheel, right? I mean, somewhere after World War II, about 1945, we picked up the idea and ran with it all the way down the football field. Now, it has become a Holly tradition for 75 plus years. We have floats, a parade, and then we expanded it to elect a queen and king and representatives from each class to ride in the parade. We even held flower parties, actually making the flowers for the floats out of paper. Well, now, as I mentioned, the old high school was used for junior high until '86 when we built the new one out on North Holly Road, which was named Ben Sherman Middle School after a very well thought of educator who passed a couple years earlier. The Mabel D. Bensett School stood empty for many years after the new school was built, but many of us harbor memories from that time when it was junior high. You know, we had lockers along the hallway. walking through the double doors from one side to the other that were lined with heaters. And don't even get me started on the whole gym experience. Smells, the old tattered plaster that hung precariously from some of the pipes, so caringly wrapped with asbestos. And some may painfully remember the boiler room where academic justice was implemented. Well, not me, of course, but whatever you choose to remember, I'm sure they're fond memories. In 1968, we really did something, a huge undertaking to say the least. But boy, I'm gonna tell you, it started a tradition for many years. A music teacher by the name of Daryl Burgett had a vision. Not one of those, oh hey, I got an idea kind of thing. No, this was a full-blown, thought out in detail, mind-boggling in its scope type of idea things. And in living color. And the people he chose to work with? The student body. That's right. We had our first live staged musical production, open to the public. The name of the play? Anyone want to take a guess? Well, you got it right. Gilbert and Sullivan, HMS Pinafore. Run entirely by the students, with only just a little guidance from some of the teachers who shared his vision. Actors, stage crew, lighting and makeup, all students. They even had to go out into the town and make their own sales pitches for the sponsorships. And do you know what? They did it eagerly with fantastic results. Just another example as to how the community of Holly works. Well, for many years now, each class getting their turn in the driver's seat, Oklahoma, Carousel, Guys and Dolls, even South Pacific, just to name a few from my era, can be a bit challenging sometimes. Hundreds of different personalities and age groups in one building. What a recipe for its own flavor of humor. From the hazing of new varsity club candidates, protests in the hall, to somebody popping the snaps on someone else's hot pants in the fully loaded lunchroom. But we won't mention any names, right, Jean-Ann? Anyway, as I mentioned, we even had a sit-down strike in the long connecting glass hallway right outside the office doors, protesting because, well, they didn't want us to use a song by Alice Cooper for that year's senior class song. But we do all have memories of our time in school, and for some reason, they seem to stick with us throughout our lifetime. Good, bad, or somewhere in between. Those memories are only a few of the things that bind us together. From our humble beginnings to what we have now with the state-of-the-art building and buildings for education, we've come a long way to making us one of the best school systems in the state of Michigan. Thank you for letting our class of 1973 take you on a journey back in time for just a bit, with hopefully some good memories of days gone by. We've briefly touched on some of our highlights, both as a community and as a school. Our voyage on this journey is far from over, as long as you don't stop believing. The next part of our story hasn't been written yet. That slice, well, that's up to our next generations to see how the new chapter plays out. 150 plus years is only the beginning. Let's make the next 150 years a time to remember. Thank you for being a part of our lives, even if only for a moment. Till next time.